There's a story which I actually believe isn't true. Why would I tell a story that isn't true? Because it serves my purposes, which of course indicates a integrity deficiency. But I'm telling the story because it'll help me make my point, and I hope I'm not incorrect in telling you the story. It's well known that the Rogatchover Gaon never cut his hair. The Rogatchover had very, very long hair. He never cut his hair, like Shimshon HaGibber. It's known also that in spite of the fact that he had his long hair, he had an incredible hadras ponim. His countenance was out of this world. Looking at the Rogatchover was such a powerful experience. I read in a book that the Russian princesses, he spent some time in Leningrad, that the daughters of the king would stand outside where he lived, at the shul, in wagons, simply to look at him, because he had an incredible hadras ponim. That's what I read. I think I read it in a sefer called Rogatchover, which is a book written by Yidin Barachov about him. An incredible hadras ponim. He never cut his hair. And there are all kinds of rumors as to why he never cut his hair. The story, which is probably the truth, is that when he was a little boy, his father, who was also a big Talmud Chacham, whose name is Rabbi Ephraim Fischel, brought him to the Tzemach Tzedek. The Seder by the Tzemach Tzedek was that all the Chassidim had a relationship with the Rebbe, with the Tzemach Tzedek. But in addition, each Chassid had a relationship with one of the Tzemach Tzedek's sons. And the name of the son that this Ephraim Fischel had a relationship with was the Maril, Yehuda Leib. Ephraim Fischel was a Yida Porush, Mamash. He was a Alateirav Alaveda, Yemam Valayla. He was altogether removed from this world. And Ephraim Fischel brought his 7-year-old prodigy to Lubavitch. The Rogatchover was a completely extraordinary mind. I mean, the Rebbe said about the Rogatchover that his mind was hundreds of years out of its place in terms of where it should have been, considering how intelligent he was. So as a child, he was extraordinary. He was a prodigy, a Gaon, a Ilui. And since the Ephraim Fischel was very close to the Maril, so he brought his son to the Maril. And the way the story is told, that the Maril brought him to his father, the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, and the Tzemach Tzedek put his holy hands on this young Ilui and he gave him a bracha. The Rogatchover once told the Rebbe Rashab, many, many years later, that he had a bracha from the Tzemach Tzedek for Nigle and not for Nister, not for Pnimiyas HaTeira, which is why he had a difficult time understanding the Kabbalah that the Rebbe Rashab had shared with him. So the story is that when the Tzemach Tzedek put his holy hands on his head, he told him to learn Masechta Nazir, the tractate Nazir. And he took this as a remez, as a hint that he should never cut his hair, and he never cut his hair. This is probably the true story. But there are numerous other stories which are told. And one of them is that the Rogatchover never cut his hair because if he would have cut his hair, it would have hurt. Everybody knows when you cut your hair, it doesn't hurt. When you yank on your hair, it hurts. In other words, when you pull on the relationship between the hair and the skull, it hurts. But cutting hair isn't painful. It's like cutting nails. It doesn't have a lot of life. It doesn't have any nerves. It's not painful. And the rumor is that the Rogatchover's hair, if you would cut his hair, it would hurt him like he cut a finger. Where does the rumor come from? Why do people say this? And like I said, I don't know with 100% certainty that this story isn't true. It's just most likely not true. The reason this story is told is because we learn in Torah that hair are organic, hair are alive. We know that hair are alive. They grow. And hair are really skinny little tubes, thin little tubes that have a cholol, have an emptiness inside where their life is present. But the amount of life, the amount of spiritual vibrancy that hair has is so little that there's no nerves and therefore there's no pain when you cut it. But hair is called moisrei moichin. It's called what spills over from the brain. I'll be talking about this soon in Mitzvah Hashem. And therefore, they are a residue, they're a spillover, they're a carryover from what's inside the brain. And when you're as intelligent as the Rogatchover, cutting hair is painful. That's the idea, that's the rumor, that because he was so smart, his hair had so much life that it would have been painful to cut his hair. And like I told you, I don't believe the story, but I'm telling the story anyway because of the relevance of this story to tonight's class. Tonight's class is about shaydos. Tonight's class is about hair. And we will discover, when it comes to hair, extremes. On the one hand, we talk about hair as being holy, as in the case of the hair of a nazir, or in general, in the case of a beard is considered holy. The pasuk says about Aron HaKohen, Kashem and Atei Valaresh Yered Al Zakon Zakan Aaron, the beard is considered very sacred, holy. On the other hand, this will also be mentioned in the Maamar. First of all, as a rule, hair from the top of the head, as opposed to hair in the beard, is considered klipa, which is why we cut it off. You don't want it to be too long, and so on. And it says in Gemara, in Halacha, Sa'ar be'isha erva, by a woman who is married, the hair is considered erva, an exposure of something which is private and not tahir, tameh. And the Maamar is also going to mention the idea that there were certain people who had to have their hair cut off completely because the hair is considered inappropriate, tumah, klipa, as it were. So we're going to be exploring the concept of hair. And we're going to be exploring the concept of hair in all of its dimensions. How in some instances hair is considered kedusha, in some instances hair is considered the opposite of kedusha. So I began with this Rogatchover story, because first of all, it's a Gishmak HaMaaseh, and as everybody knows, like HaMedrash Ikir, El HaMaaseh, what you remember from the Shir of the story, so that's enough of a reason to tell the story. And also because it helps segue, it helps introduce the subject that we're going to be discussing tonight. While on the subject of hair and beards and Kedusha, I'll share two more stories with you. The first is told Bekitzid in Teres Shalom from the Rebbe Rashab. The story is that the Rebbe Rashab was a little boy. He was playing in his grandfather's room. The Rebbe Rashab was the Rebbe Marash's son. Their home, where they lived, where they grew up, was adjacent, was directly connected to the Tzemach Tzedek's Dira. The Rebbe Marash and Tzemach Tzedek they lived together. And when the Tzemach Tzedek was older, the families were very integrated. In other words, they had to simply help the Tzemach Tzedek in many physical things, with food and other things. So they were very close. And it wasn't uncommon for the children to be playing. And in this particular case, the Rebbe Rashab was actually playing in the cheder, in the actual room where the Rebbe Tzemach Tzedek was sitting and learning and davening, in the cheder Yechidus. So the Tzemach Tzedek picked up the little boy, because the Rebbe Rashab could not have been more than 5.5, and he put him on his lap, and he took his hand, and he began to comb it through his beard. Now you know, I'm sure, that in general, the hair of the beard is considered holy. There were tzaddikim, we know specifically about the Rebbe Rashab, who would never touch their beard. They certainly wouldn't brush it and touch it, because they were afraid they would lose a hair. Our Rebbe has indicated that this is for Yechidei Skula. Only very special people have that concern. But the idea that Tzemach Tzedek would have somebody brush his fingers through his beard was in any case an anomaly. It was odd. And the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek himself, took his grandson's hand and combed it through his beard like this here. And then he said in Yiddish, Tzebersht, Tzebersht, Dachzach Tzebersht. Which meant to say, did you straighten it? Did you brush and comb the hair of my beard? Did you separate the hair so they shouldn't be entangled and confused? And he says, I think so. I think you successfully separated the hairs from one another. And then he said, cryptically, Nadir Ayad and Kabbalah. I am giving you a hand in Kabbalah. The beard of the Tzemach Tzedek is Yud Gimel Tikunei Dikna, is Keser, is a very high level. And by taking the Rebbe Rashab's hand and running it through his beard, the Tzemach Tzedek gave his grandson, the Rebbe Rashab, a yad in Kabbalah, that he should have mastery over Kabbalah. When the Rebbe Rashab was a Rebbe, he would say, Ich haba yad in Kabbalah. The Rebbe Rashab said publicly, it's printed, Ich haba yad in Kabbalah, I have a hand, I have a mastery over Kabbalah, and that's the source of the story. His yad in Kabbalah, he got from his aid. So what's the point of the story, of course? The point of the story is that the hair, and in this case the hair of the beard, is sacred, is holy, and it represents a very, very high level. And separating the hairs and giving each one its own space is mystically significant. And through this, he gave his grandson, the Rebbe Rashab, a yad in Kabbalah. I'm sure you know the Chassidishe Maamar. We all have the previous Rebbe's Maamar. And then on the previous Maamar, we have the Rebbe's Maamar. So one of the things that the Rebbe adds to the previous Rebbe's Maamar, L'chodedi, is that he brings an example of a father who bends down and picks up his little child. And the whole point is the father has to bend down to the child and raise him up. Even though arguably the child should come to the father, but that's going to take a long time for the child to appreciate. In the earliest of years, the father bends down and raises up his child, and then the Mittler Rebbe says in the Maamar, or the Mezritcher Maggid says in the Maamar, and he plays with his beard. And the Rebbe explains a similar notion. Playing with the beard is the infinite gimel tikkun dikna, which is l'mayla miseder ishtalshels. And the third story I just saw now, recently on a film, where Berel Weiss, alav hashalom, tells the story how Berel Weiss was a survivor of the Holocaust. And he came to America, to California, with nothing. And for many, many years he was quite poor. He became very connected to the Rebbe through Rabbi Reichik, alav hashalom. He became a groise oishir, became very, very rich. And he gave exorbitant amount of tzedakah, not normal amounts of tzedakah. But the thing that makes a Berel Weiss so special was that the man learned Torah day and night. The man learned Torah day and night. He had shiurim till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. He was non-stop. The Rebbe asked him to bring him a gift. So he told the Rebbe, how much money? The Rebbe said, I don't want a gift of money. I want a gift of Blatei Gemara. And he dedicated enormous amounts of his time to learning Torah. So he tells a story how he said to the Rebbe, I want Torah Gedula b'makam echad. Wealth he had, Gedula he had. So he's asking to have Torah Gedula b'makam echad, which means both wealth and Yidi and Torah. So the Rebbe said to him that the Gemara says in the end of Seita that Mishameis Rebbe, this no longer is applicable, cannot be. So he says he started learning Masechta Berachos, and he came across a Tosfos that says you could find today Torah Gedula. So the next time he's by the Rebbe, he told the Rebbe that Tosfos says there could be Torah Gedula b'makam echad, and he says the Rebbe became very, very, very serious. And he thought that the seriousness that he saw by the Rebbe was overstepped, that he had overstepped a certain line, that he had pushed it too far. He became very afraid. And the Rebbe looks at him, and the Rebbe says, if you want Torah Gedula, you have to have a beard. So he tells the Rebbe, okay, I'm going to grow a beard. And the Rebbe says, wait, don't rush. He has your wife's permission, your family's permission. So it's a story how the first time he did it, his wife told him to shave, and he shaved. And a few years later, there was a similar event. And basically, the Rebbe actually suggested at this point that he should grow a beard, which he did. And on a number of different occasions, the Rebbe would count off $13, and he would come by with his beard, which got bigger and bigger and bigger, corresponding to the Gimel Tikkun Dikna. So you have to assume that if he grew a beard, then he was zeicher to the bracha of Torah Gedula b'makam echad. Here again, you see how the beard, hair, the beard has an incredible significance. So, in short, the topic of tonight's class is shaidas, is hair. The controversy with hair is that sometimes we consider it an incredibly holy thing, and sometimes we consider it quite unholy. And of course, the question becomes, how do you explain this? How can you explain how on the one hand it represents something which is very holy, and on the other hand it represents something which is so unholy that has to be cut off, and that has to be covered over, and that it's tamei, and so forth and so on. So this is the introduction to tonight's class. If you remember last week's class, and I trust that you do, we discussed godliness, Ein Sof. And we spoke about 3 levels of godliness. We spoke about Etzem of Ein Sof, which we called, for lack of words, the black light. We spoke about Gili of Ein Sof, the revelation of the Ein Sof, which we called Sevev Kol Almin, the indirect light, the light of Hashem, which shines in an infinite way. And therefore, if we're not great enough, we don't experience it, but it's revealed. And then finally, Mamala Kol Almin, which means light which is revealed to us based on our level. Shaitis, hair, are being added to this conversation. The mashal, the example, the analogy of hair represents a concept which does not fall neatly into any of those categories. It's not Etzem Ein Sof, it's not Sevev Kol Almin, it's not Mamala Kol Almin. Instead, it's, if for lack of words, the hair of one of those levels. There's the hair of Sevev Kol Almin, there's the hair of Mamala Kol Almin, and that's really going to be the answer to the question. When Sevev Kol Almin produces hair, since Sevev Kol Almin is such a high level, the hair also is holy. But Mamala Kol Almin, because Mamala Kol Almin is a lower level, the hair of Mamala Kol Almin is considered klipa. And that's, in a most concise way, the answer to the question that we have. How could hair be represented by Kabbalah for something which is very holy, like the beard, like a Nazir's hair? And on the other hand, it's considered klipa and has to be removed and covered over and so on. And the answer is, depends the hair of what. So let's proceed. I just want to read line 151, Sif Dalet. Ubazeh Yuvan. We now understand. And now meaning, now that we explained the concept of Mamala Kol Almin, the concept of Sevev Kol Almin, and the concept of higher than Sevev Kol Almin, Yuvan Mashikosa ben Nazir, we can understand the pasuk that's written by a Nazir, by a person who makes a vow not to cut his hair, not to drink wine, and not to B'ktam Mesim, that the pasuk says, Kodesh Yihiyeh, holy it should be, Gadel Peras Areshe, the growth of the hair on his head in a feral way, in an uncontained way. Pera, you let his hair grow, you don't touch it. So Kodesh Yihiyeh doesn't mean that the Nazir should be holy. It means the hair of the Nazir should be holy. That what should be holy, Gadol Pera, allowing the hair to grow wild of the hair on the head of the Nazir, is considered holy. In other words, in the case of a Nazirite, it's not only his beard that's holy, this is true by everybody, but also the hair on the head, which is normally considered unholy. In the case of the Nazir, it's considered holy. So the question becomes, why is the hair holy? V'tzarech lahaven, the question becomes, Ma inyan hakedusha l'gidul aseh. What relationship is there between the concept of holiness and hair? And like I said earlier, the question is compounded, as you'll see later on in today's shir. Of course, with Hashem's help, we're going to find contradiction. Sometimes hair is considered holy, and sometimes hair is considered unholy. Okay, so now we pause, right? We haven't really learned very much, but we're going to continue our conversation. In other words, we're not ready yet for text. It's very important for us to have a shmooze, a conversation. Chassidus is a world. It really is. It's a world. And it has its own language. And when somebody learns Chassidus, if they really want to understand it, they need to learn the language. They need to know the form. They need to know what words mean. Oftentimes, a word which Chassidus uses may be the same as a word which is used by Lomdis, by Nigla, by Halacha, by Drush, by Hakira. But Chassidus has a unique definition for it. And understanding the meanings of words and phrases is tantamount, is very, very critical. If a person learns and reads words and translates them and doesn't know the difference between a word and a concept, sometimes the word is written as a verb and sometimes the word is written as a noun, and you can't separate between the two, you'll be terribly lost and terribly, terribly confused. In our last class, for example, I believe it was last week, I discussed the difference between the word oyer and ha'ara. Oyer means light, ha'ara means reflection. It's basically the same thing. But as I told you last week, oyer's priority is me'ein ha'moyer, that's reflection of the source. And ha'ara's priority is gilui, that it reveals itself to a recipient. So although the two words by themselves are so similar, one word denotes how light is consistent with a higher level, with the source, and the other word denotes how light is available to a lower level. So the difference between translating those words and knowing the concepts that those words represent is extraordinary. It's very, very, very large. So there's another word that I want to introduce to this conversation, to the Shmuas. And we're going to be explaining this word as an introduction to tonight's class. And the word is ha'ara de ha'ara. You have in Tanya, if you remember, in a number of places, ha'ara, ha'ara de ha'ara, and you even have what's called the ha'ara de ha'ara de ha'ara. Literally it means a ray of a ray of a ray, a light of a light of a light, or a light of a light, a reflection of a reflection. Now, for purposes of full disclosure, I will tell you that the term ha'ara de ha'ara can also be called ha'ara nivdelas, which means a reflection that's removed, separated. And it can also be called oir shel tulda. Oir shel tulda would mean approximately light, which is not reflecting naturally, but it's a byproduct or an offspring of something other, something else. And it's our intent, first of all, to explain the term ha'ara de ha'ara to you. And I have to tell you, I was a yeshiva bacher, and I learned these concepts, and for whatever reason I didn't have anybody to ask. And I remember trying to imagine in my head, what's the difference between reflection and reflection of a reflection? Light is called oir. Revealed light is called ha'ara. Ha'ara ha'ara means revealed light from the revealed light. So I remember being 15, 16, 17 years old and visualizing in my head sunlight hitting a mirror. So the sunlight would be oir. Then the mirror would produce a ha'ara. Then there'd be a second mirror, which would be a ha'ara de ha'ara. And then there'd be a third mirror, which would be a ha'ara de ha'ara de ha'ara. And in my mind, I was trying to convince myself that somehow when the light bounces off another mirror, it's somehow different. But it's of course foolish. It's simply not true. And it took me a long time to understand, or it took me a long time to get the courage to ask someone to explain to me what is the difference between the word ha'ara and the word ha'ara de ha'ara. And it's really very simple, but it's also very, very important to understand. And if you don't understand these terms, you waste your time in learning Chassidus senselessly, unnecessarily. Ha'ara means a reflection of a source. Now we also know that ha'ara means a reflection of a source that's revealing the source. Oira means the reflection of the source that may or may not reveal the source. Ha'ara or ziv, a reflection or a ray, means light that reflects a source that's also revealed. For example, the sun's light is called oir, it's light. It's called ha'ara because it's revealed. And it's also called ha'ara because when you look at the sun's light, you can trace it back to the sun. They're the same. A simple physical example for ha'ara would be the picture of a person. You look at a human being, you see their countenance, you record it, you freeze it on a frame, on your electronic medium. So now you have the light of that person, a reflection of that person. That's the concept of ha'ara. It's a light from something other. Now, bouncing that light off 10 mirrors or copying that light from one computer to a second computer to a third computer changes absolutely nothing. It's exactly the same thing. So ha'ara de ha'ara can't possibly mean what I thought when I was 15 or 16, that you simply bounce it off another mirror, it becomes a different light, because that's not the case. Ha'ara de ha'ara means, in plain words, light which comes from a source and doesn't look like it. That's the meaning of the term. Ha'ara means a light which reflects a source. Ha'ara de ha'ara means a light of that light, meaning to say it comes from the source, but somehow it's been modified and it no longer reflects the source. So the three terms, ha'ara de ha'ara, ha'ara nevdelis, and oir shel tulda, which for the most part are the same thing, all mean light that comes from a source, that's revealing the source, but not in a pure and an absolute way. It's not revealing the source completely. To the contrary, the light has changed, that's revealing something other than what the source naturally reflects. And of course, the simple example for a ha'ara de ha'ara would be the light of a rainbow. As we talked about this last week, the light of the sun reflects the sun. That means every property, every quality, every wavelength of light that could exist in the sun is revealed or available in the rays of the sun. But when the sun's light hits a cloud or some other prism and becomes infracted or diffracted, and it becomes the rainbow, the colors, so to speak, spread out over the spectrum from the shortest wavelengths to the longest wavelengths, each one of those colors would be a ha'ara de ha'ara. It comes from the sun, it's a reflection of the sun, but doesn't look like the sun. And that's the meaning of ha'ara the ha'ara. Ha'ara means a light which comes from a source, which reflects the source. Ha'ara the ha'ara means light which comes from the source that's been modified, that it no longer reflects the source. And you'll see all over Tanya, the terms oir v'ziv, oftentimes you'll find those two words going together. Oir v'ziv, a light and a ray. Oir v'ziv usually, even when they come together, are ha'ara and ha'ara the ha'ara. Oir would mean light that reflects the source. Ziv means light that comes from the source, but no longer reflects the source. So conventionally, balbatish, if you're being very simple about it, ha'ara would be Sevav Kalalman, and ha'ara the ha'ara, which we're calling ziv, would be Mamala Kalalman. Ha'ara would be a light that's a reflection of the source. Sevav Kalalman is a reflection of Atzmos, of Ein Sof, of Moed. Mamala Kalalman already has individual spheres, individual colors, Eidos Mitziyarim, and so forth. So although Mamala Kalalman, like Sevav Kalalman, is coming from the source, it's coming from the source in such a way that it's called the ha'ara the ha'ara. It's no longer reflecting the source from which it came. That's the concept of ha'ara the ha'ara. It's a simple idea. To use an example in the neshama for a ha'ara the ha'ara, the example would be as follows. The neshama is infinite, and the neshama is plain, and the neshama is one. So whatever comes from the neshama should also be infinite, should also be plain, and should also be one. We call those things that come from the neshama in a singular, plain, and infinite way, giloy nefesh, things that reflect the totality, the entirety, the infinity of the soul. And in Avedas Ha'adam, when we talk about giloy hanefesh, we have only two examples. Tainug and Ratz, the delight of a person, the delight which is the basis of the motivation, the first motivation for everything we do is a reflection of the whole neshama. And will, a person's want for certain things, which can oftentimes be higher than reason, is also a reflection of the entirety of the soul. Giloy nefesh. Tainug and Ratz. Then you have a second level. And the second level is called koiches hanefesh, the neshama's tools, faculties. Koiches hanefesh are very different than Giloy nefesh. Chochma comes from the neshama. Bina comes from the neshama. Chesed comes from the neshama. Gvura comes from the neshama. But they don't look like the neshama. The neshama is infinite and one and plain. Chochma is an attribute with characteristics and limitations. Bina is an attribute with characteristics and definition and limitations, as are Chesed and Gvura. So you have in Maamar Chassidus an expression which I happen to love, and I've told it to you in previous shurim. Afal pi sheheinam atzmiyim mikom mokom areim nafshiyim. Whatever that means. I'm throwing it in because if you understand that phrase, you understand the dynamism of this all. The bottom line is, the faculties of your neshama come from your neshama, but they're not like your neshama. They're not infinite. They're not plain. And they're not one. They're diverse, they're limited, they're complex, and they're more revealed. They come into vessels. So Sevav Kalalman, which would be ha'ara, in the Keiches HaNefesh, would be Tainug and Ratzon. Mamala Kalalman, which would be ha'ara the ha'ara, would be in Keiches HaNefesh, the Esesfiris, Chochma Bina, Chesed Gevura, and so forth and so on. Ha'ara the ha'ara. Oir shel tuldu. Light that comes from a source that no longer reflects it. Our class is about shaitis, is about hair. Shaitis, hair, are also a ha'ara the ha'ara, but a very different type of ha'ara the ha'ara. The type of ha'ara the ha'ara that hair are requires a special kind of sensitivity, meaning to say, I really don't think I'm qualified to explain it comprehensively. If you could think of your will and your delight as being a reflection of your neshama, ha'ara. If you could think of your chokhmah and your bina, your creativity and your thoroughness, your kindness and your exactitude as being koiches hanefesh, ha'ara de ha'ara. What's hair? Hair is nothing. It's really with very little life and very little purpose and very little richness. But hair, like koiches, are a ha'ara the ha'ara. They come from the nefesh and don't look like the nefesh. But hair is different than koiches. They come from the nefesh and don't look like the nefesh, but they're really nefesh. What that means, what I'm trying to tell you is that you will find Maamar Chassidus that will use the mashal of the faculties of the neshama, koichas hanefesh, versus the gilui hanefesh, versus the neshama itself, as an example for ha'ara de ha'ara, and also use the example of shairis, of hair. But there's a difference in how these two mashalim are meant. And the difference would be as follows. Memala kalaman is different than Sebev kalaman. Sebev kalaman reflects the source. Memala kalaman reflects the vessel into which it goes. In other words, Sebev kalaman's primary concern is to be true to the cause, to the source. Memala kalaman's primary concern is to be understood, is to come into a vessel. Hair, shairis, are not like the source. They're very different than the source. But they are not changed from the source. They're still reflecting the source. Hair from the soul reveals what the soul really is in a distilled way, in a concentrated way. Hair is a metaphor for how Sevev Kalalman itself becomes Ha'ara de Ha'ara. In other words, if Sevev Kalalman is Ha'ara and Mamala Kalalman is Ha'ara de Ha'ara, hair is also a Ha'ara de Ha'ara. But here is Ha'ara de Ha'ara that remains what Sevev Kalalman was. It's Ha'ara de Ha'ara of Sevev Kalalman, which continues to be Sevev Kalalman. What do I mean? It's very difficult for me to explain this. One of the examples which Chassidus brings to give us an understanding of what it means that hair are a ha'ara de ha'ara would be a riddle, chida, or a remez, a hint. Why would a person use riddles? Why would a person speak in code as opposed to speaking directly? So of course you have the more childish bases for why people would speak in riddles to provoke, to motivate, to excite, to agitate, like the story of Shimshon HaGiber. But there's also a much deeper reason. People speak in riddles because what they need to say, they can't say directly. Sometimes the concepts in which to communicate are so subtle and so sensitive and so refined and so abstract, you simply can't articulate them. So you create a riddle, which is a very, 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 very indirect, a very concealed form of revealing an idea. And you say to the person whose job it is to solve the riddle, you have to figure the riddle out by yourself. I can't give you the riddle. If and when you'll figure out the riddle, you will have the truth as it's been delivered to you through this terribly convoluted medium, through a terribly limiting, through a terribly, if you will, distorting intermediate. The riddle is very, very far away from the thing that it's a riddle for. The person who decodes the riddle, the person who solves the riddle, is able, through that indirect form, to know what the riddle is about. In other words, if you want to tell somebody something which is really, really very deep, sometimes you can't say it to them because it's too profound. You give them a riddle, and if they figure it out, they come to it. Hair is a representative of Sevev Kalalman itself. Hair has a lot less life than Koichas HaNefesh. There's much less life in hair than there is in your brain. Your brain is the reflection of your neshama. Except that your neshama is infinite and simple and one. And the faculties of chokhmah, bina, and das, which are in your brain, are many, unlimited, and diverse. Hair is also very far away from the original light, but hair is very far away from the original light in such a way that it's representing the original light. In other words, we're using the words ha'ara ha'ara in two very distinct ways. One way of using the word ha'ara ha'ara is the light is changed. The original light is gone. And now we have a different light, a lesser light, a colored light, a measured light, a formed light, a light that can go into a vessel. Or if you wanted to use alternative terms, this is Oyer v'chayis nafsheinu nitan lono, right? Oyer is Sevev Kalalman, and chayis is Mamala Kalalman. Oyer is ha'ara, and chayis is ha'ara de ha'ara. So the words ha'ara de ha'ara means light that comes from a source that's changed. When you use the term ha'ara de ha'ara for shairis, for hair, you're also using the same term. But here it means something different. You are creating something which is very, very different than the source. The hair is the ha'ara of whatever it's representing, which makes it incredibly different than the source which it represents it. But even though it's so different than the source that's representing, it's carrying that source. So hair are more like Sevav Kalaman in a way than Mamala Kalaman is. Because in hair, the Sevav Kalaman is condensed in a riddle in hair. But on the other hand, hair is much, much more concealed. In hair, there's no light at all. There's no understanding at all. There's no richness and appreciation at all. And Mamala Kalaman, there may be less richness, less appreciation, less understanding, but there's some understanding at least. And to use the ultimate example for hair, it's halachas. Halachas are called hair. What's the relation between halachas and hair? Halachas are ratzon ha'elyon. The will of God is in halachas. You learn Torah, you try to understand. You learn Torah, you have discussion, you have debate, you have argument about what the psak din is, what's correct or what's incorrect. You're engaging your mind in understanding the Torah. But the law, the verdict, the final outcome that you wish to understand is not Chochmas Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's not the wisdom of God, it's the Tzein Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's the will of God, the mitzvah itself, the conclusion that you will reach is higher than the Chochmah, the Torah, which brought you to it. So imagine knowing the din and not knowing how you got there. If you know the law, you know the mitzvah, but you don't know the process, the intellectual process by which that mitzvah was arrived at. When you have that halacha, do you have more or less than the person who understands all the scholarship? And the answer is both. That here is the law. The law is a representative of the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Sevav Kalaman, that's been distilled down into an actual command, but the ayat is missing altogether. So to summarize what I just said, we're using the words ha'ara in two distinct ways. When you talk about mamale kalaman, ha'ara means a light which reflects a source, but it's not like the source. It reveals some of what the source is, but not the entirety of the source. And of course, what's advantageous about mamale kalaman is that it actually is able to be revealed in vessels and in limbs and inspire us in what we call in our culture a pnimius way. Hair are also called ha'ara, but in a different way. They're the same madrege as the thing they represent. If they represent Sevav Kalaman, the hair of Sevav Kalaman is also Sevav Kalaman, but has been delivered through such an incredibly strong contraction. It's been changed so intensely that in the hair that comes from Sevav Kalaman, there is, in quotes, no gilui at all. But even though there's no gilui, it's representative of the higher madrege. So as I told you, if you want to understand in short why sometimes hair is considered very holy and sometimes hair is considered very unholy, the answer is, if the hair is the hair of Sevav Kalaman, it's representing Sevav Kalaman. So notwithstanding that in the hair there's no gilui, but it's a representation of a very high light, and therefore, although there's no gilui, it's kaddish. But then you have the hair of Mamale Kalaman. Mamale Kalaman, to start with, is a very low level, relatively speaking, and the hair of Mamale Kalaman is so reduced, it's a ha'ara of something that is already by itself a ha'ara, and that's the basis for klipa. So therefore, the very same idea, the concept of hair, sometimes is used as a representation for kedusha, like a beard, like the hair of a nazir, like the beard of Aaron HaKohen specifically, and so forth. On the other hand, the very same physical metaphor of hair is sometimes representative of klipa, like the hair of a married woman, like the hair of the Leviim, and so forth. And the answer is because the concept is the same. Hair is always a ha'ara, but it's a ha'ara which is not reducing it from a higher level to a lower level. It's simply delivering the higher level in an encapsulated way, in a concentrated way, like a halacha, b'li tam, represents Sevav Kalaman. So if it's hair of a very high level, then the hair themselves are holy. If it's hair of a lower level, then the hair themselves are the opposite of holy or tummy. So we begin to read on line 151. Ubazeh, all the information we had last week about Etzem Avein Sof and Sevav Kalaman and Mamale Kalaman will lead us to discuss something additional. Yuv Masha Kosa ben Nazir, we can understand, was written by a Nazirite. Kadesh Yeh, there should be a holiness in Gadel Peras Hareshe, the fact that he grows the hair on his head, feral, wild, unconstrained, is considered Kadesh, holy. Our question is, what's the relationship between holiness and growing hair? It says the Rabbi brings a pasuk. This is a pasuk in Daniel. For those who are not aware, there are entire chapters of Tanakh that are written in Aramaic. Some of them are in Daniel, some of them I think are in Nehemiah. And this is an Aramaic pasuk in Tanakh. The pasuk says, "Va'atik yoimin," the one of ancient time, Yossi v'geimed is sitting, and it says, "Levusha ketlak chiver," is wearing a garment of white snow. Usa'aresha kaman naka, the hair on the head is like white wool. Now, if this was a class in Tanakh, if this was not a class in Chassidus, Atik Yomin means Hashem. But Atik Yomin Yosef, Hashem, who is called Atik Yomin, is sitting. Now, why is Hashem called Atik Yomin? Because Yomin means time. And Atik means separated and removed from time. It's correct to allude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as Atik Yomin, removed from time. He's sitting, and he has a white tunic, which is like snow, and white hair, which is like wool. Kabbalah doesn't disagree that Atik Yomin means the Eibishter. But of course, Kabbalah understands that any time you use anthropomorphic form, vis-a-vis HaKadosh Baruch Hu, chas v'shalom, to say that you mean Atzmos Ein Sof, Hashem himself, because he has no form, it means Ishtalshlos, it means Atzilus, it means Adam Elyon. And therefore, Atik Yomin, like any other form that's used in Tanakh and in Chazal and in Kabbalah, has to be a mashal for something mystical. So what's Atik Yomin? Upirish Atik Yomin? What does it mean? Atik Yomin means literally removed from time. Or as the pasuk says, Hamisnased, that he's exalted and above Miyameis Eilam, what's called the days of the world. Now I'm going to cheat a little. In Chassidus you have Yemei Eilam and you have Yemei Kedem. For all of Allah, Hashem Mincha Sudah Shem Kimi Eilam, or Chshanim Chad Miniyas. Chshanim Chad Miniyas means Yemei Kedem. For the Kabbalists keeping score at home, and I know you're Kabbalists, and I know you're keeping score, Yemei Eilam is Atzilus, Zoh. Yemei Kedem is Keser. Yemei Eilam means days or midas as they're revealed, and Yemei Kedem means days or midas as they are concealed and hidden. So when it says here that Atik Yomin is Hamisnasa, Yemeis Eilam, is the same thing as if it were to say that Atik Yomin means removed from Zman, above Yemei Eilam, above time, and it's understood in the context of Eilam, but instead, like the idea of Yemei Kedem, which is Lamaylam and Azman, higher than time, or as Azman exists, as time is included in above time. So Atik Yomin, Kvayachal the Eibishter, is the Madreg of Atik. He's removed from Zman, and he has white hair, white beard. Ki Yemei Seilam, the days of the world, goes on the midas of Atzilus, who, Bechinas HaMokar HaChaim, it's a source of life. HaMislabesh, which will later reveal itself, Bechinas HaMalak Laman, in the lower worlds, it'll be revealed, you'll be able to feel it and taste it and touch it. Keneda, we know that the 6 midas of Atzilus are called the 6 days. And these 6 midas and these 6 days themselves reveal themselves in the lower worlds. Like Chassidus interprets, 6 days Hashem created the world, and every Bal Mitzvah Yingaleh who learns the Maamar knows it should say B'Sheshes, in 6 days. Why did it say Sheishes Yom? Translates Chassidus V'Leiksiv B'Sheshes. It doesn't say in 6 days. It says simply 6. Because 6 days doesn't mean time. 6 days means the 6 midas. It's an allusion to the supernal measure, midas. Hamislapshim, which reveal themselves. Lahach is Eilam, to give life to the worlds. Sunday brings down kindness, like it says in Sharech in the Perek Yud Aleph. And consequently, it creates Erumayim, light and water, and so forth. So Yemeis Eilam means the light of godliness, which comes down into worldliness. And the Yemeis Eilam means how the days themselves are godliness. V'zehu b'chinas memalek alam. And malek alam means godliness that comes down into the worlds in such a way that the worlds are able to receive it. Because it's limited. This is the madrega of Yemeis Eilam. We're on line 158 now. Avo mahu seivatzmusei yizbarach. Kayachal atzmus, which for our purposes is Sevav Kalamad. You don't have to go any higher than that. Sevav means removed from Kalamad, from the worlds. Shu'ukah, they shall move is holy and separated. He's exalted, he's above. He's higher than the world. And the time of the world, he's uplifted and exalted. Being able to reveal in the worlds, save of Kalam, an infinite plane, one light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we have no relationship with. So, Memale Kalam would be called Yemei Eilam, which means godliness of time that's revealed in the world. And Save of Kalam would be called Yemei Kedem, or in this Maamar, it would be called Atik Yemen. Removed from time. Says the Rabbi on line 160, V'zeo Pirush Atik Yemen. Atik means separated from time, Lashon HaMaitik Harim, like one who copies Harim. Shenetak V'nivdal, it's removed and it's copied, Mimeis B'bchinas Mimeis Eilam, from the level of time, which has to do with the world. Line 163. What comes down from Save of Kalaman, from what's called Atakim, Liyes Moker v'Chayes, to be a source in life, Liyes Haves, to the subsequent creation of Bechinas Yemei Selim, or Bechinas Mamale Kalaman, the level of godliness which is close to the world, which is also called Mamale Kalaman, Hurak Ha'ora Mitzum Tzemes, is a very limited ray, which is which is incomparably separated from the Eibishter himself. Hashem is Ein Sof, right? Save of Kalam is Ein Sof. There is the Mamale Kalam, which comes from Save of Kalam, which is a Ha'ara the Ha'ara. But Mamale Kalam comes from Save of Kalam in such a way where it's different than Save of Kalam. And then you have the concept of Sa'arei Shamar Nake. It comes from Save of Kalaman. It continues to be Save of Kalaman. But in order for it to be in this world, it has to come through an incredible contraction. Regarding this, it is written, that the hair on his head is like wool. The idea that Save of Kalam, that Ein Sof, is delivered to the world and reaches the world in its Save of Kalam in an Ein Sof way, and the world receives it, requires this phenomenon of Shaydus. It's compared to the hair which breaks through the skull. And he says, according to Teda and Kabbalah, the life, the vitality of hair comes from the brain. And of course, the brain is intelligent, and the hair is a nuisance. As it is known, every single hair is hollow. Inside the tube, inside the hollowness of the hair, there's a nursing from the brain. Nevertheless, it's the residual, it's the spillover, it's what's wasted from the use of the brain. Limited life, very, very much. To what extent is the life in here diminished? To such an extent, there's very little to do with the life which is in the brain. And the proof is, you can cut the hair and it won't hurt. That's how far removed it is. So, hair is a mashal for how Save of Kalaman is delivered. On the one hand, it's even more concealed than Mamale Kalaman. On the other hand, it's a reflection of Save of Kalaman more than Mamale Kalaman is. Also in the Nimshal, if you want to find an analogy to represent the idea of bringing Save of Kalaman itself down into these worlds, it's impossible to produce a second, a different analogy. To explain the concept of light and life, that comes from Nebuchadnezzar is in an essential state. To be a source, which is called the source of life, only here. Save of Kalaman comes from Mamale Kalaman comes from Save of Kalaman in a very, very reduced way. The marshal which helps explain that transition is here. Because in here, hair has nothing or little to do with the life which is in the brain. V'haraya, you can cut hair, it doesn't hurt. V'kach, similarly, zu ha'ara, this ray, this light, this shine, ein negia klal, has no touch, has no effect, has no bearing at all. Le mehu seivatzmusi izbarach, to him himself. Kihu b'yatzmehi himself. On line 171, now is kodesh, or muvdal is holy and separated. V'rak, and what's being brought forward is bechinas ha'ara, mitzum tzem, as a limited light. Hanim shel shayres, which is compared to hair, which is nim shechas liyas maked. It becomes the basis in the source. Lihis haves maked chayim u'malak alam. So he's saying the malak alaman comes from sevav kalaman, and the transitional stage is hair, but malak alaman is different than sevav kalaman. And in hair, the sevav kalaman is represented in a concentrated way, in a distilled way, like the example I gave you from halach. Line 173. Now I'm going to give you a heads up, okay? From 173 till 182 is holy hair. And from 183 until 188 is unholy hair. The concept is one. Ha'ara de ha'ara. I come from a source and don't reflect the source. But in contrast to Mamale Kalaman, where I come from a source and I don't reflect the source, but I reveal a lesser light, Sevav Kalaman comes from the source. It's the same as the source, but it reveals nothing. So if the source is very high, then the hair is holy. And if the source is not high, then the hair is klipa. There is a relationship between mystical concepts of holiness, of things that reflect HaKadosh Baruch Hu and hair. The Dafka Shaida, specifically here, made Alinyan Agadusha, represents in our reality here. Holiness. Where do you see in a person's body holiness? What part of a human being's body is considered holy from a mystical perspective? And of course the answer is the beard. More than anything else. The Ha'bahatalya. Because the two are interdependent. What two? Since the level of life it's representing, namely Sevav Kalam, namely Etzem HaNefesh, cannot be revealed. Only when it's compacted, when it's concentrated, when it's distilled into hair. When you have hair that come from a very high level, they're the same high level distilled into the hair. On hair, you can hang, you can connect holiness. They come from a level which is holy, removed. When you want to bring something down from Sevav Kalaman that should remain Sevav Kalaman, even when it comes down, the only method is to come bedilug ha'erech, in a quantum separated phenomena, and that's what hair is. When we're talking about life, which is from a malak alam, and a malak alam is also a ha'ara of Sevav Kalam. But it's ha'ara of Sevav Kalam, which is revealing a lesser light. Which is drawn in a way that's revealed in the worlds. The sham only in the case of a malak alam. In his slapshus, you have the possibility of manifesting and going through the chain reaction of steps of the cause and effect of the worlds. We discussed earlier means last week. The in his slapshus ve'ishtalshel is the notion of revealing in a way that can go from step to step. That as the light goes from a higher level to a lower level, is diminished from level to level. For example, when ideas come into feelings, the feeling cannot appreciate the nuance that the brain can understand. A soul that comes into a body. The body is living because the soul is inside it, but the life of the soul that the body knows is much less than the life of the soul as it is by itself. So in Mamalik Kalam, it's ha'ara, which is a gilui, but a lesser gilui. Shaydis of Sevav Kalam is a greater gilui that comes in this concentrated way. Okay, and therefore you get to the next point. From Mamalik Kalam, you do not want chayis of Shaydis. Because since Mamalik Alaman is a limited life, anyway, altogether, therefore, the ha'ara of Mamalik Alaman, as represented by Shaydus, would be Klipa, or we give life to Klipa. This idea of Ishtalshalos, where the light is revealed, but less and less from world to world, is Heipich Mebechinas HaShaydus. It's the opposite of the concept of hair, where the essence of what is on high is preserved in this removed form. Shashayda made alam shacha, because hair represents what is brought down. Shebetzimtzum atzum, in such a terribly contracted way, achein arech klal lahamak, has no comparison to the source whatsoever. And therefore, when you want to talk about Mamalik Alaman, you wouldn't use the mashal of Shaydis, elasham shayach hamashal, the mashal, the example, the analogy you would use to describe Mamalik coming from Saivav Kalaman would be Mislaptis, and Neshama of a Gufa soul coming into a body. That is the same life that the Neshama had in Gan Eden, is the same life the Neshama has in a Guf, but it's much different and much less. Like the manifesting of Seichel, so, hair and Chayis of Mamalik Alaman, both are a Ha'ara the Ha'ara, but in very, very different ways. Here is a Ha'ara the Ha'ara of Seivav Kalaman, which is representing Seivav Kalaman, because Seivav Kalaman is unchanged. Mamalik Alaman reveals something of Seivav Kalaman, but it's much reduced. And when you talk about Mamalik Alaman, you don't want to use the mashal of Shaydus, you want to use the mashal of Chayis. Which leads us to the opposite idea. Sa'ar be'isha erva. Even though we said before that hair is holy as represented by the Nazir, and hair is holy as represented by a beard, because if the hair is a ha'ara the ha'ara of Seivav Kalalman, it's also godliness. But if the hair is a ha'ara the ha'ara of Mamalik Kalalman, then it's klipa. A woman represents in this scheme Mamalik Alaman. Mamalik Alaman means life, which is limited and revealed, and measured, in other words, limited to each individual world, because Shehi Bechinas Nukva Kaneda. If you would compare Seivav Kalaman and Mamalik Alaman, it would be like the man and the woman. Seivav Kalaman would be the masculine aspect, and Mamalik Alaman would be the feminine aspect. Seivav Kalaman would be the aspect which is unadaptable, that remains the same from place to place and world to world. Mamalik Alaman would be the aspect which is adaptable and applied. And of course, you understand yourself the strengths and weaknesses of each of those two models. But the hair of Seivav Kalaman is Kedusha, and the hair of Mamalik Alaman is Klipa. Valkain. And therefore, Kishenimshach Misha, when from the levels of Mamalik Alaman, the life and light is limited to start with, and you have a light which is so contracted, like what we described before, what we would call in our culture a ha'ara, the ha'ara of Mamalik Alaman, bebechinas shayda, as reduced to a hair, Klipa could very easily nurse, draw, leech, suck from that, because it's so far contracted. So we can explain how the very same phenomena is in some instances considered Gedusha, and in other instances considered Klipa. And he gives you another example. The Leviim, the Leviites, were instructed to remove their hair, because Leviim are also Gevura. Leviim are Gevura, which in this case would be, I guess, relative to Kayanim, like Seviv and Mamale. If a Levi gives the flow of life, which is represented by hair, Klipa will live. And of course, you all know that this is the story of Kerach. Kerach's rebellion was based in part on the fact that Aaron HaKohen was made to be gorgeous, and he was made to look like a prune, forgive my candor. Aaron HaKohen, the Pasuk says, the beautiful beard. And Kerach was Tavidu Simon called Psara. The reason for this is because Aaron is Chesed, and Kerach is a Levi, is Gevura. And on a very simple level, this represents Seviv and Mamale. So the hair of Seviv is Kedusha, and the hair of Mamale is Klipa. Line 201. Masha Enkein mebechinas Save of Kalaman, when you have hair, when you have a ha'ara, the ha'ara, which is an inyan atzmi from Save of Kalaman, ha'kadosh muvdal, which is removed from a chain reaction of levels, she'ef shaliyas misham, that there is no possibility that there should be from there hishtalshos ilavi all the chain reaction of worlds, alkein accordingly ef shaliyas hamshacha, it's impossible for something to be brought to us in a way that we should get it, and it should be revealed to us only through here. Save of Kalaman is hidden from us. The only thing which we know from Save of Kalaman is the hairs of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And like I told you before, this is called halachas and mitzvahs. And this kind of hair carries the holiness that's above dafke. Shu mokir, which is higher even, the savas mebechinas Maamar Kalaman, higher than the source of life Maamar Kalaman cannot discuss above. Since a Nazir's statement, I want to be a Nazir, is called Yafli. Now the simple translation of the word Yafli means he speaks or he judges. But he interprets the word Yafli from the word Pele. In other words, the event of making yourself a Nazir has to do with Keser. In Indian mitzvahs do the idea, this mitzvah roim is Lamaila shows us something incredibly high. The Hainu in different words, that the Nazir ascends to a very high level of a Daimel Elyon is like a lakus on the Madrege of Save of Kalaman. Alkain accordingly, Nemar it's written by the Nazir, Kodesh Yihi Gadol Perav Agema, even his hair is holy. So we had a shear on hair, on Shaidas. Now, how this shear on hair ties in to the rest of this Maamar, I'm not sure. But the Rebbe did mention on the line 7, the very, very beginning of the Maamar, Mashakosa ben Nazir Gamkin Loshen Kodesh, Kodesh Yagadol Pera. So here the Rebbe addressed how the hair of a Nazir is called Kodesh. What we're going to carry from this shir, or from what we learned until now, into the next shir, or shiurim, is that there is, again, memale, sevev, and atzmos. Memale, sevev, and atzmos are the three kaddish in Kedusha, kaddish, kaddish, kaddish. And hair, which represent a great tzimtzum, can belong to either mamale, in which case it would be klipa, or to seviv, in which place it would be called kedusha, and therefore even hair of seviv kalam would be called kaddish. As far as I remember, that's the extent to which this concept of hair is going to be relevant in the next couple of classes. Now, while I'm talking, I want to tell you something. We say tzitzis every day, right? V'yemer d'Shem el Meishe, leimer. Daber abnei Yisrael, v'yamarta aleim, v'asu lehem tzitzis, al kanfe v'yam dereisam, v'nosnu al tzitzis akonof, p'sil techeles. V'hayu lechem le-tzitzis. Now, you don't have a siddur in front of you, but I just want to point something out. Tzitzis are a combination of a garment, of a beged, and strings. And the garment itself, the beged, is representative of Sevav Kalaman, of infinite light. The tzitzis themselves are the equivalent of Maamar Kalaman. So the way this is stated is as follows. You have to make tzitzis al kanfei v'gdeim l'dereisam, v'nosnu al kanfei v'gdeim l'dereisam, v'nosnu al tzitzis hakonof. There are threads which come from the garment. The threads are the equivalent of hair at the edge of a garment, coming from the garment, but they're called tzitzis hakonof. And of course, it's brought in Chassidus based on Gemara and Halacha, hakonof minakrav. Pardon me. And the way it's explained in Chassidus is that the beged itself is Sevav Kalaman. The tzitzis would be Maamar Kalaman. In other words, the relationship between the tzitzis and the beged would be a ha'ara the ha'ara. They're coming from the garment, They're made from the same material as the garment, the same light as the garment, but the life in the tzitzis is the ha'ara from the beged. But then it says something else. Al tzitzis hakonov, on the tzitzis which sits on the edge of the corner. And the tzitzis are the same material as the beged itself. And the tzitzis are considered the ha'ara of the beged. You have psil techeles, you have a thread of blue. The Kabbalah is that the psil techeles, the thread of blue, is a ha'ara of the tzitzis, just like the tzitzis are a ha'ara of the beged. That means to say, the garment itself represents Sevav Kalaman. The tzitzis represents Mamala Kalaman. The blue represents a ha'ara of Mamala Kalaman. And of course, the mitzvah goes on to say, V'haya lachem l'tzitzis, which means that when you have all three levels, Sevav Kalaman and Mamala Kalaman and ha'ara of Mamala Kalaman, then you have tzitzis from the words Meitzitz benacharakim. You can see clearly, and you don't make any mistakes. You don't become an Eved Aved Zara, you makayim all the mitzvahs, and like the Parshas Tzitzis finishes. So of course we all know that we don't use tcheles. We don't use the blue thread. And there's actually a letter from the Rebbe Rashab, written to the Radzine Rebbe, who was a very famous tzaddik, who rediscovered tcheles, or he claimed to have rediscovered tcheles. And he asked the Rebbe Rashab to join him on his campaign. He wrote many svarim to join him in his campaign to reenact tcheles. And the Rebbe Rashab wrote him in a letter that it says in Kisvei Arizos, it says in Kabbalah, we don't have tcheles b'zman hazeh. Now, of course, you ask the average person, why don't we have tcheles nowadays? And the answer is because we can't find a snail, whatever it is. I mean, the truth is, many people claim to know what it is. But the argument is we don't have it anymore, we can't get a hold of it, we're not next to Yisrael, whatever the excuses are, but the argument is we don't have it. But Arizal says we don't have tcheles because we don't have the capacity to use the madrege of tcheles in Kedusha. So the Rebbe Rashab writes to the Radzine Rebbe, he says, I'm not questioning whether your discovery of tcheles is true or not true. Maybe you found it. But the Arizal writes that nowadays there's no tcheles. So the Radzine asks the Rebbe Rashab, if you're going to say that nowadays there's no tcheles, then nowadays there should also not be tefillin shel rosh, because tefillin shel rosh and tefillin shel yad is very similar to the white and the blue of tzitzis. So the Rebbe Rashab answers him, you can't compare concepts, the concepts and matters of Kabbalah. So I want you to think about this. If the beged is Sevav Kalaman, and the tzitzis are Mamala Kalaman, or ha'ara of Sevav Kalaman, and the tcheles is a ha'ara of Mamala Kalaman, the degree of holiness that would be necessary for the tcheles to be kedusha and not to have a unique sachitzenim has to be extraordinary. You're talking about life which is so reduced, so small. It's a ha'ara, it's shairis, not of Sevav Kalaman. It's a ha'ara, it's shairis of Mamala Kalaman. Now you have three levels. The beged, the Sevav Kalaman. The kanaf min kanaf is the tcheles, which is the lavan is Mamala Kalaman. The tcheles is a further ha'ara, again a shina mahos ershel tulda from the psil, from the threads. So Kabbalah says don't use tcheles nowadays because it'll only create klipa. The truth of the matter is that when you have tcheles, there's a focus of kedusha that's laser precise. Sevav Kalaman is all over the place. Mamala Kalaman is revealed. Tcheles is even more focused. And dafka when you have tcheles, then you have ha'olachem l'tzitzis, v'risa meisei, v'schatav l'chum mitzvahs Hashem. You don't get smart. You don't get decide that the mitzvahs should be different. You do exactly what the Eibishter says. But nowadays, this tcheles, which used to be a mitzvah, because the chayes that it would possess would be so diminished, it would have a unique sachitzenim. And only in the holiest and the highest of times could the ha'ara of Mamala Kalaman also be kedusha. So tonight's class is connected to the Maamar, but it is also quite self-contained. We use this Maamar as an opportunity to explore a concept which is very important in Chassidus. Of course, you all understand it. There are many little details in the Shia that I overlooked because you can't learn everything, but this is our Shia for this week.